Okay, so something I want to talk about today is, as many of you know, I am a big Hunter S. Thompson fan, and naturally that leads to me speaking a lot about Hunter S. Thompson when I'm having conversations with people. And something that is, for Hunter S. Thompson fans, it's a pretty well known fact, but a lot of other people just aren't aware of this or kind of ignorant to it. There is like this almost like when you ask somebody about Hunter S. Thompson, but and they're not like a big Hunter S. Thompson fan, they're not like doing deep dives on him. They're just like they know his name. They know him as is some crazy drug abusing journalist who was never ever sober and was out of his mind 100% of the time, 24/7. And here's the thing. So Hunter S. Thompson famously wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And the thing about Hunter S. Thompson is a good bit of his journalistic work as famously gonzo journalism. And gonzo journalism is a style of journalism where, like, let's say, like Hunter S. Thompson wrote an article called "Fear and Loathing at the Super Bowl." He also did the Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved. You're like if you're at a sporting event and you're a gonzo journalist, you're not going to be writing your article or your essay about the game, or at least not just about the game. You're going to be like telling everything, like what you saw when you got out of your car. You're going to be talking like finding seats and getting food and drink. You're going to be like observing the people. It's going to be, and it's like Hunter S. Thompson famously, it's so take Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This book is a wild if you've ever read it, right? And a big part of the appeal of it is the gonzo journalism aspect. So many of this, some guy when talking about Hunter S. Thompson's gonzo journalism, he said something about how it's not factual, but it's accurate. And the thing about that, what that means is, gonzo journalism, especially Hunter S. Thompson's, he invented gonzo journalism and popularized it, is it's mostly like there's gonna be fictional aspects. Like you're gonna exaggerate things. There's gonna be hyperbole. It's part fiction, part fact. It's more about sending an accurate image rather than reporting on the exact facts. So this book, if you read it throughout the book, Hunter S. Thompson and his attorney, Oscar Zeta Acosta, also known as Dr. Gonzo, or the 300-pound Samoan in the book. Throughout the book, they're taking LSD, they're mescaline, they also are doing amyl nitrate. They're having these crazy like they're doing cocaine, they're ether. But in this book was based off of a real road trip, well, actually two road trips that Hunter S. Thompson and his attorney Oscar Zeta Acosta took in the 70s. And in the book, it's like back-to-back 2 weekends. Or no, it's a single week. I don't remember the exact timeline. But these were like, in real life, this happened 2 months apart. Because the book is split into two parts. One where they're covering the 400 motorcycle race. The other is a drug conference. And they're doing all these wild things in the book. But in real life, which Hunter S. Thompson basically did this journalistic piece on, in real life, the extent of their substance use was they drink a lot of alcohol, Oscar Zeta Acosta had brought along some marijuana, and I think Hunter S. Thompson may have too. And they were using and abusing uh, prescription amphetamines, like so. What was one of them called? Dexedrine was a big one. I think that was it, and it was a prescription amphetamine that Hunter, I believe, used to stay up to write. So don't get me wrong, they were having some nasty side effects. They were essentially like, and you can really feel this in the book. Essentially, the entirety of this thing was written while Hunter S. Thompson was near anxiety or panic attack. So don't get me wrong, they were doing some crazy stuff, right? But it was not near as wild as what the Gonzo journalism book would have you believe, because this is more about conveying the image of the trip and the feeling that came along with it. And what's really helpful when doing that is exaggeration and other stuff, so you can get the point across. So a lot of people have this idea, and that not just with this book, but like that Hunter S. Thompson was a wild man because they watch interviews with him, they watch him go on Conan, and yeah, he was. Watch his second appearance on Conan O'Brien. That was hilarious. He was drunk out of his mind and possibly some other stuff. But for some reason, people seem to have that image overshadow the, like, they only think of Hunter S. Thompson as the crazy guy who abused substances. However, Hunter S. Thompson, also earlier in his career, this is from, I believe it was this was copyright 1966. Like, through 1960, 1966, and 1967, Hunter S. Thompson also was the man who wrote Hell's Angels. This is a pre-Gonzo work. So Hunter S. Thompson, I've talked about I've talked about this before on the channel. Hunter S. Thompson went and essentially became an honorary member of the Hells Angels for a year. All this stuff was coming up about the Hells Angels in the 60s, and like, he felt that somebody needed to go get the actual facts rather than the media sensationalism. So he rode with the Hells Angels, he lived with them, he went on all their escapades, and then he was writing about it, and he wrote this book. It is, in my edition here, 273 pages long. And if you've read this book, you will know it's not exactly, there's this thing called new journalism, which Gonzo journalism sprouted out from. It's like a tree branch on the tree of new journalism. And this was not exactly cleanly new journalism, and it definitely wasn't full Gonzo, but this was closer to traditional journalism. Well, not quite. It's also far from that too. It's kind of like a middle child in this sense. But it is much more, you can see Hunter S. Thompson's natural writing mannerisms and his sentence structures and his way of explaining things and his really just like, his straight to the point, very wild style is definitely infused in this, but this is pre-Gonzo. This is essentially a classic journalistic work. And even in his Gonzo stuff, he is highly articulate. He could take on literary greats going back to, I'd even say, Cervantes. His prose is very good, and that's another thing he's well known for. But for some reason, as I've been trying to say in this very convoluted video, people have that, they don't think of him as a highly articulate literary personality or a real human being. They don't think of him as that. They just have this myth of Hunter S. Thompson. as this wild, not to be trusted, crazy man who did some drugs and wrote a few books. And it's really kind of sad because, like, Hunter S. Thompson was a highly creative person. He wrote all these books, he did the journalism, he was very involved in the world, he was very smart, he had a very rich mark he left on the world, but people only know the myth. And the thing about that is, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and its movie counterpart, Hunter S. Thompson, especially at first, but a lot of his gonzo work was written under his alter ego, Raoul Duke. And he actually, I think he originally published this book under, he didn't put Hunter S. Thompson as the author, he put Raoul Duke. And Raoul Duke was this exaggerated, mythical version of Hunter S. Thompson. So Hunter S. Thompson was the guy who just was an eccentric writer who did abused some prescription amphetamines on a trip to Las Vegas to cover some journalism work. Raoul Duke is the guy who, to cover the same thing, but he was doing all this other crazy stuff. He was the wild man. He was the Raoul Duke was Hunter S. Thompson's way of taking the facts of the situation that weren't quite whelming enough to portray the sense of energy he felt about a situation. So he used Raoul Duke to do that. So if you ask somebody about Hunter S. Thompson who's not a Hunter S. Thompson fan, they are going to assume that Raoul Duke is Hunter S. Thompson, and rather than an exaggerated, pretty much caricature of who Hunter S. Thompson really was. And they also seem to miss the point of this book. Like, if you've ever, like, people just read this, I've talked to people who read this and they're just like, oh, it's just about two depraved guys who go to Las Vegas and who are hypocrites. But in a sense, that's almost the point, because the book is them exposing the excess and the extremeness of Las Vegas and using that as a metaphor for the American dream. And a big aspect of Hunter S. Thompson's gonzo journalism is becoming what you were writing about. Like, if you have ever read The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved, the whole thing is about how, as the title would suggest, how wild and just slobbish and just crazy all the people at the Derby were. But by the end of the story, a big part of it is, well, it's not a story, but by the end of the journalistic piece, the big part of it is the Hunter coming to the realization that he and his illustrator, who came along with him to do the illustrations for that article, Ralph Steadman, who also illustrated Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, had become they had become a part of the depravity they were writing about and they were illustrating. So it's like kind of this, like, the irony of it. So people, like, when people say, oh, it's depraved, that's the point. That's the image he's trying to show. He's trying to paint you a picture of how bad things are. He's not trying to be above it. He's not trying to be Jesus Christ, essentially, as I guess the way to put it. I mean, watch interviews with Hunter S. Thompson where he's asked about this image of him as this wild man, and he says it best himself. He says how he talks about how he's become a caricature of his real self and his media personality. And it's kind of sad because he said something about how it would be better off if he died so that they could just take the myth and make more films or something like that. No, it would be better if he died so they could, not more films. This was before the original. At that point, all that had been out was Where the Buffalo Roam. But essentially, Hunter S. Thompson was a wild man, yes, but he was also a very articulate one who knew very well the exaggeration he was doing, and it was very strategic, and it was for a purpose. So before you go off thinking that he's just some wild savage to just be put to the side and not taken seriously, you gotta, like, look at what the goal of his writing actually was and who he was in his real life.